I hope it works. Yes. Yes. I hope so. Yes. He does. So he is very used to speaking, but he has an informal style. So he speaks conversation. Yeah. He's very involved in sustainability issues, environmental issues, tree planting. He talked about it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, about the first half was his second half was good. Actually, on the progressive side, council. How he compared to others, but I think he reflected the pragmatism as well. So, pragmatic. He wants more and more. I'll tell you later. You know. Other places. Well, that's okay, because you can hold on to the shoe. Yeah, I was there last week. I went down to the Supreme Court. Jason Figueroa. The justices were busy. They were on coffee break.
So, at the end of the music announcement, David is going to cut in to talk about next week's musical guests.
Okay,
And then we'll get back to your announcements.
okay.
So if you got that latest one. So right there is where David's going to come up. So if he's not already
Okay.
here, invite him up.
Okay. Okay, sure. Are these mics on already? Because I got my green light on here.
If your green light is on, it should be on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking next Sunday, if we have a lot of food left over, could we invite the people out there?
If they're here by then, yeah.
I don't want to throw it away.
Yeah, if they're here. Yeah. Not sure what time they'll arrive. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm inviting you up. You're coming up at some point to make an announcement.
Yeah.
I've got you. Yeah, okay. Good morning. Good morning.
Hey.
How's this?
Thank you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from,
Welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Well, welcome to everyone here. I have a few announcements to make. Most of you know that we are between music directors, and until we find a new church musician to join our staff, we'll be having recorded music some Sundays and guest musicians when we can arrange it. Today, once again, you get the Barger Brothers in combination, Reverend Tim leading our sung parts and his brother Tilden by recording. If you know church musicians who might be possibilities for the Toledo Unitarians music director, please make them aware that we are searching. David?
Thank you, Joe. So I'm up here because I am excited to tell you about our guest musicians for next Sunday, the Montvales. Not only do they play banjo and guitar, they sing and harmonize beautifully together. So Sally Bice and Molly Rokelson became friends at the Tennessee Valley UU Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. They have been playing together and writing songs since they were teenagers. This summer, they did a tour out west and are now performing at folk clubs and other venues in the East, including New York City, and in the Midwest, including Toledo. To paraphrase the Montvale's website, their music will take you to places both raucous and reverent, equal parts honky-tonk mischief and earnest meditation on friendship, heartbreak, and place. They will be performing next Saturday night at a sort of house concert in downtown Toledo. So if you want to hear the raucous honky-tonk mischief, attend that show. I'll be there. See me after service for more info. If you want to enjoy the earnest, meditative, reverent side of their music, join me next Sunday for our regular worship at 11 a.m. Thank you.
we won't complain if they're a little raucous here either.
Thanks, David. That sounds like a real special concert and time not to be missed. Also, if you're like to use an assisted listening device to help with hearing our public address system during services, we're now broadcasting on FM 90.7. And we have a couple of small radios and headphones available. Our church is part of the multi-faith meditation sessions held in conjunction with the Flowing Waters Sangha. For a brief time, we had in-person settings here, but have returned to Zoom only. There are twice a month sessions on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. On the second and fourth Sundays, and every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. If you need the Zoom number, please contact the church office, and we thank Karen Christie and the Flowing Waters for their continuing leadership on this. In 1 week, next Sunday, coffee hour, after the Sunday service will combine with a fundraiser for the Multi-Faith Council of Northwest Ohio, sponsored by the council's men's group. Coffee hour with the usual snacks will proceed as usual in Fellowship Hall, but at the same time and in the same place, if you'd like to eat and not just have coffee, the Multi-Faith Council men's group will sell you a meal ticket for $20, and you can dish up a plate of vegetarian and non-vegetarian food while enjoying some musical accompaniment from one of our members. The fundraiser is from noon to 2, and contact Joe Moran, I guess that's me, for an RSVP, because we need to know how many people are coming to understand how much food to prepare. And so I guess that's what I've just said. There is a flyer in the back if you'd like to take a look at that flyer and how you can RSVP, or please see me again after the service. Also, this coming Sunday, the 9th, continuing through Wednesday, the 12th, we are providing our grounds and facilities and teaming with the Greater New Psalmist Church next door to host Leonard Peltier's Walk to Justice, a group making a prayerful walk from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Washington, D.C. to plead for the release of Leonard Peltier, a Native American elder who has been incarcerated in the federal prison system for 46 years. Their walk is covering more than 1,100 miles until it is near the halfway point. From about October 9 through the 12th, of special note, that includes Indigenous Peoples Day, which is on the 10th. The walkers will stop here for a few days of rest. Besides providing room for them to camp in our backyard, we can also provide some meals, giving them some hospitality, including the opportunity for them to take showers and helping them to get to a laundromat. You might know that Leonard Peltier was convicted in 1977 at a very controversial trial to 2 life terms to be served consecutively for aiding and abetting murder related to the deaths of 2 FBI agents in 1975. Was a shooting at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. There have been allegations of false statements by the government and by witnesses from the time of Peltier's extradition from Canada, and continuing through the trial, witnesses have recanted their testimony. Peltier, who will turn or be 78 years old tomorrow and who has health challenges, has been eligible for parole for almost 30 years. Prominent U.S. and world leaders have called for clemency. The walkers hope that this release will happen during President Biden's term in office.
And on our minds, perhaps especially because of the topic of today's Sunday service, we think of justice and that our judicial system can be improved. Tomorrow is when the new term of the Supreme Court begins. May it not be disastrous because of the court's changed nature. And may the newest Associate Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, move the court away from partisanship and to reason. Hurricane Ian has wreaked havoc, as expected. People of Cuba, Florida, the Carolinas, Puerto Rico, and all the other places affected by the storm are in our thoughts. We continue to be concerned about the Russian invasion and war in Ukraine, as well as political unrest, including persecution in many nations, including Iran. And here in the United States, we live in the midst of politics and election campaigns, and we work for the promotion of some issues, such as bodily autonomy, and the defeat of others, including exploitation of natural resources. In our own lives and those of friends and family, there are health, relations, financial, and other challenges, including celebrating new lives and mourning deaths. One reason we join in religious gatherings is to realize these common links. May we have compassion for all.
Like the jealous, I like the jealous.
Oh, Joe, it's opening words first. Joe.
Yeah, I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry.
We're doing things a little backwards right now.
Opening words. These words are "Life is Political" by Timothy Snyder. Life is political not because the world cares about how you feel, but because the world reacts to what you do. The minor choices we make are themselves a kind of vote, making it more or less likely that free and fair elections will be held in the future. In politics of every day, our words and our gestures or their absence counts very much. The symbols of today enable the reality of tomorrow.
And now, as Joe lights the chalice, I share these words written by our friend Jamie Yandel. We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may be a beacon of hope in moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown. We light this flame and are emboldened by its blaze, knowing our strength as a prophetic and powerful people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call to love. And please join me in reciting the covenant of this congregation.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
And our opening hymn is number 318, We Would Be One. The lyrics will be on the screen. I hope the tune is familiar because I depend on you, I think, more than on my sketchy guitar skills to get through this.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge our bounty. We would be a greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Hear me? Okay. All right. Does everybody know what we're looking at today? The Wonder Box. Everybody say ooh. Everybody say ah. I wonder if there's anyone who would like to open our Wonder Box for us today. Thank you, ma'am. Tell us what you see in there.
Okay. A bag.
A paper bag filled with, I know,
Paper ball.
wadded up paper. That's right. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
What else do you see?
I see a basket.
A little basket?
Yeah.
All right. We today are going to play a game. Thank you, Miss Tishy. This game is going to teach us about privilege. Miss Aaliyah has kindly agreed to pass out these paper balls. There's not enough for everybody, so this is just going to be representational.
No, it's a lot of, yeah, but they're not enough. She just said that we're sharing.
And Aaliyah, if you would, please make sure you make it all the way back to Carla. Thank you. All of you here are representing our country's population. This is a random sample. I cannot guarantee that we are demographically representative. Please note and be advised that everyone has been provided with roughly equivalent tools by me, Fate. You might consider this your free public education that you receive in this country. You might consider it your subsidized stable housing. But this is a base level set of tools that has been provided roughly equally to everyone here. And Aaliyah, would you please provide a paper ball to Reverend Tim and to Joe? No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
If I'm loud, I want one.
Oh, that's all right.
Thank you. The councilman. Get the councilman.
Welcome to the game of life. You all have been provided with a basic set of tools here to achieve your goals. Your goal is to remain where you are in your seats, throw your paper ball into this basket. I am perfectly serious. Fate has no mercy. All right. On the count of 3, are we ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
No, he cheated.
I cheated. Try to catch, can you try to catch it? There he goes. Come on, Bernie. Well, catch it.
Oh,
Nobody getting anything.
nobody succeeded. Terrible job, everybody. So how do people feel about this game? What are your thoughts about it? Don't like it. Wasn't fair? It was perfectly fair. Everyone got the same thing. Yes. Basket's little, that's true. Should have had a bigger basket.
Or a smaller ball.
This is not a basketball court. I have what I had in my office. Pardon me? The basket wasn't stationary, that's true. I actually did try to help people, and also I didn't always notice when the balls were headed my way. Anybody else? Should have been able to move forward. Interesting. It's impossible? That turned out to be true. Reverend Tim, Joe, what did you guys think about the game?
Well, I enjoyed being able to throw things in church. But I didn't see that I could succeed in the task of getting the paper into the basket.
Joe?
I'm very disappointed and discouraged that I wasn't able to even being that close, I couldn't make it.
So Reverend Tim and Joe are saying that it was impossible and discouraging. Carla, Cindy, was it impossible or discouraging for you? How did you know that? Oh, I'm sorry. Carla said she knew she wasn't going to make it. Long distance? Cindy?
Well, I used to have yarn, but it was too light. So it wasn't my fault.
Cindy is blaming the paper balls. The tools were inappropriate? You can throw a paper ball into a basket. That's a game. People do that. So Reverend Tim and Joe have said it was very discouraging and it was too hard to make it. And they were the closest to the basket. Carla also said it was difficult and that she couldn't make it. It wasn't very aerodynamic. You guys have extremely high expectations of my ability to make balls. So, Reverend Tim and Joe, how far away do you think they were from the basket, roughly? 5 feet? That's about right. How far do you think Carla was? 55 feet? All right. Reverend Tim and Joe have said that it was difficult. And it was true. They had a hard time. All they could see, though, was the 5 or 6 feet between them and their goal. They had very little perception of how far Carla was and how far Carla and Cindy were from the goal. So when you're close to the goal, all you can see is the distance between the goal and you. Carla could see much greater distance because she had more distance to see. In coffee hour, if people talk about this game and Carla says to you, that was really hard, if Joe were to run over and say, hey, my job was hard too, how sympathetic would Carla be? How valuable a contribution would that be? So at coffee hour, if people in the back tell you about how completely impossible this game was, don't tell them that your job was hard too. Just listen.
Please join me for a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. I'll be reading Circle of Our Love by Paul Beadle, adapted. For life and love, justice and peace, the spectacle of foolish pride is ever before us in these times. Indeed, pride has seldom looked so foolish in our lifetimes. So many people in positions of public trust and responsibility have lost their authority and our confidence spectacularly. And still they persist in their pride. They lie, they brag, they evade, they lecture. And they seem not to know that this makes matters worse. The example of the humble is also before us. Indeed, humility has seldom looked so wise. So many people in positions of public trust and responsibility who otherwise would not attract our notice have gained authority and our confidence by unspectacularly acting with honor. They persist in seeking truth, being accountable, stepping up to their duties with courage, asking the right questions. And without centering themselves, they seem to know that this matters. Seldom has the contrast between foolish pride and honest humility been set so clearly before us. Come what may we own enough humility that we never need to be humbled. May we own enough compassion that we are never tempted to humiliate. May we own enough forgiveness that neither the humbled nor the humiliators, who are all so much more, are ever outside the circle of our love. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, so may it be. Amen. Let's observe 1 minute of silence.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. I have this reading, Marshal of the United States Supreme Court. The Honorable, the Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. Oyez, oyez, oyez. All persons having business before the Honorable, the Supreme Court of the United States are admonished to draw near and give their attention, for the court is now sitting. God save the United States and this honorable court.
Save us. Those words Joe recited will be said by the Marshal of the Supreme Court tomorrow, the first Monday in October, as the 2022 session of the court begins. I don't anticipate a good session of impartial reasoning and decision-making. I'll read to you from a Washington Post article published on Friday. You thought the Supreme Court's last term was bad? Brace yourself, by Ruth Marcus. The cataclysmic Supreme Court term this past year that included the unprecedented leak of a draft opinion and the end of constitutional protection for abortion would, in the normal ebb and flow, be followed by a period of quiet to let internal wounds heal and public opinion settle. That doesn't appear likely. Already with its calendar only partly filled, the justices have once again piled onto their agenda cases that embroil the court in some of the most inflammatory issues confronting the nation, and more are on the way. If you follow the news, you'll be hearing about the cases coming up this term. There is the potential for more decisions that show how the new conservative majority of the Supreme Court has become an extension of the Republican Party rather than conscientious judges removing themselves from politics to respect the Constitution and keep the United States a respected nation the world can look to for models of justice. In today's New York Times, an article by Adam Liptak, as new term starts, Supreme Court poised to resume rightward push, includes this paragraph. The court has near total power to decide which cases it will hear, and it often uses that discretion to resolve disputes among lower courts. The court agreed to hear many of the major cases in the coming term, despite a lack of such conflicts, an indication that the new majority is pursuing an agenda and setting the pace of change. Ruth Marcus also wrote in her article, "Such behavior has consequences. It produces charged moments, such as Justice Sonia Sotomayor at the oral argument in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, asking, will this institution survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its reading are just political acts? It produces dissents of astonishing ferocity, such as the statement by the three liberals in Dobbs, today the proclivities of individuals rule. And it contributes, much as Chief Justice John Roberts might like to believe otherwise, to the court's precipitous decline in public esteem. I felt a necessity to bring a talk about the Supreme Court to a religious service because we must be alert. What the recently built conservative majority of justices is doing is not administering equal justice under the law, but imposing partisan wishes. And they're losing trust and credibility in their rush to judgment. Approval of the work of the court is at its lowest ever recorded. If you want to expand on what you hear today, there is much to explore and plenty of commentary to give you greater context. We're not even getting to the religion establishment clause and separation of church and state. For the Supreme Court at this time, we don't have trust, and many of us feel as if the democratic process is being hijacked by ideology. There is little check on the court and its members, and there should be. About the only way I see that the Supreme Court moved toward more openness was necessitated by the COVID-19 crisis, when the court began live streaming audio of the arguments. It will continue that this term, while also for the first time since March 2020, letting a limited amount of the public into the courtroom to see the proceedings. And now masking will be optional. Though the court permits audio and has done so since 1955, it still prohibits cameras. And I think there would be more openness if the proceedings were shown on live TV, but possibly grandstanding too. What isn't yet happening for the court and its justices? Ethics rules, for one. The members of the Supreme Court are the only ones in the federal judiciary who aren't subject to a code of ethics. Maybe the early America thought was that the members of the highest court are naturally beyond reproach. Now we know better. As he put it in his new book, Profiles in Ignorance, Andy Borowitz stated, in 1991, the first President Bush tapped a man with only 1 year of judicial experience to serve on the United States Supreme Court. 30 years later, the nation is still paying the price for his selection of Clarence Thomas. Were he bound by ethics, Thomas would be recusing himself from several cases because of his connection to an election denier, his wife, Jenny Thomas. Not to mention the reproach he overcame, yes, partly with the help of Joe Biden 30 years ago, when he was accused of sexual harassment by Anita Hill, but went on to be confirmed by the court. Similar reproach faced Brett Kavanaugh in his confirmation hearings when he was accused of sexual harassment by Christine Blasey Ford, and he was confirmed nonetheless. Were the process better, neither of them would have been confirmed. And while I'm saying they shouldn't be there, I must add Neil Gorsuch, as that was pure politics of a Republican-led Senate stalling for 9 months without giving Merrick Garland a confirmation hearing. Garland is now Attorney General. And then quickly confirming Gorsuch when Donald Trump nominated him. And flip-flopping on the rule they basically made up to block Garland, that it was in the last year of a presidency, so they wouldn't consider a supposed lame duck nomination, and doing exactly that in 30 days for Amy Coney Barrett, just before the presidential election in which Trump was defeated by Biden. That's 4 members of the 6-justice conservative majority attaining Supreme Court seats under questionable ways. You might be interested to know, however, that at this same time, thanks to the newest justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, taking her seat on the court, the 9-member court for the first time has 4 women out of only 6 in the court's history. Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Ginsburg were the other 2. 2 Black justices and only 4 white men. I wonder if changing demographics can change the courts. There have been 116 justices in the Supreme Court's history. 10 of those were Unitarians, at least part of their lives. William Cushing, a Unitarian, was part of the first court, nominated by George Washington. The names you'll likely recognize are Oliver Wendell Holmes at the beginning of the 20th century and William Howard Taft, Chief Justice from 1921 to 1930 and the only former U.S. president to serve on the court. It's been 64 years without a Unitarian justice. The current court has 6 Roman Catholics, a Catholic-raised Episcopalian, a non-denominational Protestant, and a Jewish justice. Now, let me back up and return to how the court could be more open and more credible in another aspect. No, it's not by nominating Unitarian Universalists, though I would probably see that as a good selection for democracy and ethics. It's by limiting what's come to be known as the shadow docket. That's the process of the court making decisions in some instances without court argument, and often with the court offering no explanation of its proceedings or decisions. A traditional way for the shadow docket that we see is in death penalty cases, near the time of a prisoner's scheduled execution, when it literally is a life or death decision, and the court might stay an execution or allow it to proceed and permit the state to kill someone convicted of a crime. The conservative majority court has seemed to expand the shadow docket so it can pass judgment on a wide selection of appeals. There were 17 shadow docket decisions in the 2021 term and 24 in the 2020 term. There are other thoughts out there about how to reform and change the Supreme Court, such as imposing term limits so it's no longer a lifetime appointment, and expanding the size of the court, packing it with more people in the line of the general public or even progressive politics than the conservative manipulation that is on us now. Something must be done. I agree with imposing ethics rules, which I think the court itself could do without congressional action. I also think term limits could be good, but I don't want to be the one deciding the length of the term. And in my reading on the issue, I find that might require a constitutional amendment, hard to have happen. The Supreme Court has seemed to settle into polarization, 5-4 decisions for several terms, always with swing votes, so there was no clear liberal or conservative bloc. It's as if judges used conscience, a reference there to our fifth Unitarian principle. It seems politics have prevailed for the present, as the 6-3 majority means the swing votes will be fewer, such as Roberts not voting to overturn Roe versus Wade in the Dobbs decision, but his swing having no effect on the final 5-4 conservative decision, which I really hope can be fixed in part by who is elected to the House of Representatives and Senate in November, and the congressional action on restoring the right to have an abortion that could be implemented as a result. And there are many more cases the court could hear with issues that have to be reconsidered to improve our democracy, our nation. Let's not forget the Citizens United decision of a few years ago, lifting limits on corporate campaign contributions, the result of which, in effect, makes it easier to buy elections. That decision is partly how, about a year ago, a very wealthy person, Barry Side, gave control of a $1.6 billion fund, the Marble Freedom Trust, to a conservative, Leonard Leo, involved in politics and reshaping the judiciary, and who has an affiliation to the Federalist Society, which is responsible for cultivating and approving judicial prospects in conservative circles at all judicial levels. In a way, the courts at all levels are being bought and packed by conservatives. We, the people, can't do much about it, with the exception of using our votes to elect lawmakers who want to fix the system in a way that would effectively restore the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process. Samuel Alito, for example, won't read a letter from one of us pointing out that he has become a political hack. Realize you're right and resign. Others won't react to be called out on their statements of respecting stare decisis, established precedents made during their confirmation hearings, and how those statements were disregarded to reject Roe versus Wade, and resign in consequence after restoring rights of privacy and choice. I fear that the Supreme Court will continue to make decisions based more on Republican talking points than on interpreting how the Constitution as a living document applies in the cases the court chooses to consider, and forget the conservatives' statements of being originalists and trying to interpret what those who wrote the Constitution would do. This isn't the end of the 1700s when the Constitution was written. It's not even 1992, the year of the most recent ratification of an amendment, the 27th, having to do with congressional pay raises, which took more than 200 years to be ratified. The Supreme Court must get with the times, not return us to 1776 and the ways of that largely straight white male controlled world. And speaking of ratification, shouldn't the Equal Rights Amendment be law now that enough states have ratified it? And the Supreme Court has to say that an imposed deadline for ratification that has gone by isn't constitutional. So the ERA is the law of the land. Change must come, especially with the Supreme Court, if the United States is to survive. I really think so. So be it.
We now come to the offering portion of our service. You can see on the screen in front of you, there's many opportunities to be able to support the mission and the ongoing work of those churches. You can go to the uutoledo.org, click on Give, and then click on Online Giving. You can also reach us through First Unitarian Church, our address 3205 Glendale, Toledo 43614. At the rear of the church in the sanctuary as you're leaving, you will find baskets where offerings can be placed, and then in front of your pews, you will see a collection, an envelope here with various kinds of offering opportunities. Thank you.
For this coming Sunday's spiritual forum at 9:45 a.m. in Fellowship Hall, our friend Phil Park Thomas will continue his adult religious education series with part 2 of his monthly A Matter of Justice. And we extend great appreciation to Councilmember Nick Comives, who is here today for his spiritual forum this morning. Thank you, Nick. Our 11 a.m. service here in the sanctuary next week will be global, with the recent 500th anniversary of the first circumnavigation of the earth. We'll consider how vast our planet is and that it's a small world.
And immediately after today's service, please join us in Fellowship Hall for coffee and social time. We'd be pleased to answer a question visitors have about our church, and we'll enjoy spending time with new people and people new to us and familiar friends. I have now these closing words. This essential work of justice and liberation for all by Rosemary Bray McNatt. By no means are we Unitarian Universalists perfect. We often fail as much as we succeed. Yet even when we have broken our vows 1,000 times, to refer to a line in a poem by Rumi, We return to this essential work of justice and liberation for all. We do the work best when we remember what church is and what church is not. Church is not a place to hide. It is not a place to get away from the world. It is not a place where we get to pretend that the lives we live in our particular situations are not terribly complex, often confusing, and sometimes depressing. Church is a place where we stand with one another, look the world in the eye, attempt to see it clearly, and gather strength to face what we see with courage, and yet, yes, with joy.
And as we send the flame of our chalice into our nation, may it light the way of justice.